reactions to what type of news she has received, but we can see that she is shaken up at this time and being comforted by people who are in the area coming over to make sure that she's okay, and that hopefully what she's finding out is something that is going to improve as the morning goes on for her. But a number of people are still here on that location. We were told that this is the Schnucks parking lot, not far from the school. We were told that they wanted to clear this area as soon as they can. And if parents are trying to get there, you're told to instead go to Gateway STEM. That is where your student is going to be. Now, as we have watched the live video of the scene, we have seen a number of students on their cell phones, hopefully getting in touch with their parent or guardian to let them know that they are okay. But it does appear to us that the people who have been injured in this shooting incident have all been taken to the hospital. We do not believe that there are any more victims on the campus at this time. Again, police are still there and they continue to look. But you watch this scene here, and I think it says a lot about the emotions and everything else that have been taking place. You know, we heard it from Mercedes when she said that, you know, parents were hugging their kids and holding on tight. You're watching it right now, right in front of us.
Absolutely, and we just heard it ourselves with that woman. She shrieked out audibly. We could hear her, and she went to the ground, but it seems as if she was comforted by a number of people there. Parents, I know, family members, grandparents, you're looking for answers. Rennie just said we have seen a couple of students in the area in that Schnucks parking lot that we mentioned earlier, texting, calling. If you could get in touch with your student via cell phone, you could at least have the peace of mind to know that your student is not among the 6 injured. We do know one of those people was the shooter.
And we don't know the extent of the shooter's injuries either. And really, we don't know how long things took place on campus, as far as, was this something that happened really quick? Was it a situation where there was a little bit more back and forth? We don't know that at this time, but we do know that the shooter was quickly stopped by police inside of the Central Visual Performing Arts High School. We do know that was indeed the case. So to say police were there, we don't know if that was a police officer that came on scene or if that was a resource officer who's already there on campus and just jumped into action.
Yes, and they say quickly stopped. So that is good news. And as we continue to learn more about the injuries, we're hoping that everyone will be able to recover. Now, we do know at this time at least 2 of the people injured were students and are on the way to area hospitals for treatment.
Now, we do have Mercedes McKay, who is live on the scene there. You saw Alex Fees is at South Precinct for us as well. We are waiting for a news conference, and as you can see, the media is starting to set up now. This news conference is going to take place at 11 o'clock this morning, so just about 13 minutes from right now. Again, we're going to scan around the area here, give you an idea of what is taking place. And again, police officers are out. They're trying to give people some information as to what's going on. But this is the scene straight up the street. And excuse me for looking away from time to time, but I don't see very well, so I need to look at a larger monitor. But you can see some of the emergency vehicles now exiting the area, yet there's still a lot of people there walking about trying to figure out what's going on. And again, probably making sure that their loved one is safe.
Absolutely. And just moments ago, you may have seen a Schnucks sign, the Schnucks parking lot in our live pictures and our coverage. Now, a lot of parents were making their way there to reconnect with their student. Now, you're not supposed to go there at this point. You're actually asked to go to Gateway STEM, that's on McCree, in order to touch base with your student, reunite with your student. The school told us, I think maybe about 20 minutes ago at this point, that they're trying to work to account for everybody, safely reunite parent and student, because we know that parents, family members, you have questions about where your student is, how your student is doing. So if you can reach out to them and get in contact with them via phone, that would be great to give you that peace of mind and know where your student is. But you're asked to go to Gateway STEM on McCree, which is not far from Central VPA, in order to connect with your student and ensure that they're okay.
Now, while the scene remains active at this time, as you look up the street, you can see some of the emergency vehicles starting to pull away from the high school and make their way out of the area. I think our picture there is kind of freezing and unfreezing for us, but we did see a couple of the emergency vehicles leave at this time. Mercedes McKay is down there. You saw her sort of make her way into the picture there. At 11 o'clock, that is when police are going to speak and give us the most updated information as to what took place at the high school, the amount of kids involved and things like this. Our Mercedes McKay is back in front of us now. And Mercedes, you've now been there for a little bit while longer. What more have you been able to learn?
Hey, Rennie and Sydney. I actually just spoke with Salvation Army. Their truck pulled up a little bit ago. They said they were called by the city's emergency manager to come here and just provide water and snacks to first responders, parents, and students. So they just arrived here. We haven't learned much more from the last time we spoke with you. Still just that people are trickling in, coming to get their kids, but also most of the buses have left at this point. I only see one bus left that is probably taking kids over to that spot where parents need to pick them up. So definitely still much calmer than before. We did hear just a little bit ago there's been a group of students. I heard some cries over there. Maybe the shock is just kind of settling in of what took place here at their school this morning, but still people emotionally wrapped up in all this. As you can see behind me though, this scene behind me still looks pretty much the same. Lights are still on. There's still fire departments, police cars, everyone over there kind of blocking that area right near the school. So that's still an active scene. Most of these cars have been here for a while, just kind of waiting to get around everywhere. But most of this parking lot has been cleared here in Chinooks. Again, there's really only one school bus left. Students, parents are starting to trickle out, but we still do have first responders around here just making sure everyone is okay. And again, Salvation Army has shown up if anyone needs some hydration or snacks at this point. But still definitely an active scene near the school, and we're all hoping to find more at that press conference at the school and also from the police department.
All right, Mercedes, I know that you've been in your location for a while, and I don't know if you've been able to talk to any of the police officers on scene there. And if you haven't, just go ahead and say, no, I haven't at this point. But just from the people you have talked to right now, and we want to make sure that everybody is safe, do people feel that they're safe now, or do you still have the sense that they're kind of making sure that all is clear, and as long as the police vehicles are there, they're still on a little bit of a tension?
From what I've heard from talking to people, I think people are just comfortable with the police officers being here, but there's still that tension around it. And I really think that's because of the fear of the unknown that the parent I talked to earlier today, it's just kind of that ongoing fear. I think that a lot of people feel a lot of the time now around this area. And I think that it's just kind of building up here, especially when you get a school involved. But right now, I think people are feeling comfortable, but there's still that kind of fear in the back of their mind from what I've heard. I haven't been able to speak to any police officers. I've been more focused, Rennie, to be honest with you, on the people here, and just kind of what they're going through and what they're feeling.
Yeah, you expressed your emotions as well with what you saw on your way over there, and you know the camera went over your shoulder and zoomed in, and we saw an embrace taking place, and we saw bodies moving as if maybe somebody was crying and emotionally shook. For you personally, where are you now with all of this? Have you settled into reporter mode, or are you still kind of taking this in because it's such a real thing?
To be honest with you, I still am taking it in. I think this is one of those moments where we are going to be the reporters and tell you what's happening, but we're still human, and this is so raw. It's raw emotion here, so I am still feeling it. I'll tell you, when I got out of the car, I was kind of shaking. I'm not a parent, but I just can't imagine what that would feel like, but I have been a student before, and I can't imagine what they're going through. School is supposed to be safe, and that's what everyone believes, and so I just can't imagine what they're feeling at that time. But for me, what really got me was those parents running to their kids, those grandparents, those guardians, those aunts and uncles. I talked to a woman as I was coming up here. She was a sophomore. She said she was waiting on her sister and she had lost her phone in school. So she was in that panic mode because she was like, how can I get in contact with my sister? I even asked her, I was like, do you want to use my phone? And she was like, I'm using my friends, like they're across the street. I'm going to go up to them. But she said it was actually her birthday today.
Wow.
And she was like, I'm just thinking of everybody there, but I can't imagine. She's like, what they're going through, but like, what a terrible way to spend my birthday. I just never thought this would happen at my school. So again, so much raw emotion. And I think what also really got me was the mom I spoke to earlier, who said that she had just put her kid in homeschool, just put her kid in public school. Sorry, she was homeschooled for a while until this past year. So that mom was going through so much, and the whole time we were talking, there was just a steady tear down that mom's face, and it's just a lot of emotion here. So I will say we're going to give you the facts, but we're also human here, and this is tough to see for everybody.
Mercedes, I want to say thank you so much for letting us know the raw emotions of the situation and being honest and letting us know what you know at this time and don't know at this time. We do know that in about 6 minutes from right now, there will be a press conference, a news conference taking place at the school on the high school field. We'll bring that to you as soon as that begins to happen. Let us once again recap what we know so far.
Yes, absolutely. So we do know that there are 6 people who are hurt. Now that includes the shooter in the shooting at Central VPA High School. Now all 6 people have been taken to a hospital for care. Now we do know that this is an array of injuries here. We have some gunshot wounds, shrapnel, and cardiac arrest. Police are on site right now at Central Visual and Performing Arts this morning. Now, this is after the reports came in of an active shooter. And just so you know, Rennie, there are 2 high schools that are right by each other, right?
And you got to keep in mind that you've got Collegiate there, you've got Central Visual Performing Arts. But this was early in the morning, which means that kids are probably in the hallways, making their way to class and things like this. Attendance may not have been taken at this time. So again, they're still trying to account for the kids who were in school today or were supposed to be in school today and those who did not go to school today, just to make sure there's not anyone missing. Now, this is video from earlier when there was many more people in the parking lot and the buses were in the parking lot. This is the Schnucks, not far from the school. This is the meetup spot where the students gathered before getting on the buses and going down the Gateway stand. We've been trying to reiterate the point, parents, guardians, brothers, sisters, family members, do not go to the Schnucks. Go to the Gateway STEM campus, 5101 McCree.
That's right. And these are for parents that are for both students in both schools. So that's CVPA and Collegiate. Both of the schools went into lockdown. Both of the schools were evacuated. So if you have students at either school, you're asked to go to Gateway STEM. That's where you can reconnect with them. That's when you can then, at this point, we were told that you can take your student home from there. Now the shooter, from what we do know, we got this information from the school that the shooter was quickly stopped by police inside CVPA. And we know that we have 6 injuries. So one of those was the shooter in this incident. And then we do know at least 2 students are injured and on their way to the hospital.
And once again, the injuries are varied. So we know that there are gunshot wounds. We know that there's shrapnel, and that's probably, something that came off the wall or a bullet that had been ricocheted and broke apart. We also know that someone went into cardiac arrest. We don't know ages. We don't know genders at this point. We don't know how many students were injured. We don't know how many faculty members or anyone like that was injured in this situation. So we want to make sure that as we go through the morning, we're bringing you the most accurate news that we possibly can, because it is a developing and fluid situation. Now, at the top of the hour, hopefully we'll have a lot more clarity as to what's taken place when we hear from the police department itself and someone steps before the camera and lets us know a timeline as to what happened, who's been injured at what happened, and whether or not there is a motive at this time as to why someone brought a gun inside the campus. But that is where all this took place, was inside the school, and that is where the shooter was apprehended, was inside the school itself.
Yeah, that's the very limited information that we have right now. That's all we know. But we do know that there are a lot of questions still. Our Mercedes McKay is on the ground. She was in that Schnucks parking lot where a lot of students and parents were meeting up. But we do know now you actually need to go to Gateway STEM on McCree. But we're hearing, as Mercedes is out there right now, she's speaking to a student who told her that she jumped out of a window. The student was a male. The student jumped out of the window. That's what our producer Sheila is saying, to find safety when shots were ringing out in the
school. You can only imagine the panic, okay? Because if you watch any news over the last couple of years, you've seen this happen, and you're trying to get away. They say fight, flight, hide. And so if you're in this situation, you've got those choices to make. And, you know, kids are going to make the choice that they feel safest with as far as getting away from the situation. So, you know, maybe that child was hurt jumping from the window and may have injured an ankle or something like that. Again, we don't know at this time. These things are going to become clearer to us as time goes on. One of the interesting questions I would have is, were the officers that responded trained in active shooter situations for schools? You know, we know that they're trained for active shooter situations when it comes to hostages and things like that, burglaries, but are they prepared when they go into this situation? And how do they go about going door to door to door to make sure that the kids are safe? I
would surely hope so. And, you know, even for the past 30 or so minutes, we've reported that the police is at the school. They were conducting an extensive search, continuing to look for anybody else who may still be inside the school. This is a dark reality when it comes to our country. And our hearts go out to all of the parents. And parents, if you can reach out to your kid via cell phone, get in touch with them. You can pick up your student at Gateway STEM High School. That's on 5101 McCree. That is the designated meetup spot to pick up your student from Central VPA or Collegiate High School.
And one of the things that we want to make sure that people who don't have a kid in those schools is to stay out of the area at this time. Arsenal and Kingshighway, a number of streets were closed as, you know, police of course searched the neighborhood to make sure that there was only one person involved in all of this, and right now only one person has been taken into custody. But as you can get the sense, that's a wild area right now. This is where the news conference is going to take place. This is on the athletic field there. You see on the running track at the high school. We're waiting for someone to take the podium and begin to answer the questions from the media this morning so that parents and everyone alike can have some type of peace of mind. We do see police officers as well as the fire department there on hand, all the emergency people in the city, because this is something that at this point, and I've been here for 18 years now, I cannot remember an active shooter situation on a campus in St. Louis. I could be totally wrong, but my recollection is this is the first time that I've had to witness something like this within our city. But everybody is there, hopefully ready to answer some questions so we can bring some clarity to this situation. But this is at Arsenal and Kingshighway. That is where the school is located. You're asked not to drive down into that area, and really, if you can, just avoid that area altogether and allow the authorities to do what they need to do, allow the parents and the guardians, the loved ones to reunite with their youngsters as well, and let this situation calm itself down. But any moment now, we expect someone to start speaking to let us know what took place at the school this morning.
Yes, we have a lot of questions after the injury toll has gone up in the past hour. We do know now that 6 people were hurt. One of those people was the shooter in this situation, or person believed to have been the shooter. All of the people who were injured were taken to hospitals in the area. Now, we also know that these are not all gunshot wounds that we are receiving here in the newsroom. We're hearing that there are some gunshot wounds, injuries from shrapnel, and even cardiac arrest as one of those reported injuries, one of those 6 reported injuries. And we're expecting any moment to hear more information about what happened, possibly even in the moments leading up to this. We were told that that CV.
Okay. Our Sarah Maki is on scene right now. She can hear me. Sarah, tell me about what's going on right now, because I see people gathered and now they are breaking apart.
Yeah, right, Rennie. We were originally told to go over to the South Precinct for some kind of update that would be coming from police about this matter. But then probably about 15 minutes ago, we were told to come here to the school's football field. You can see this group. We have many elected officials. We have the mayor, emergency responders from every level of city government out here. They had huddled a little bit closer, and we were told that they would be coming over any moment now to give us an update. But you can see the group has kind of broken apart, and it looks like they might still have a lot to discuss. There's been a lot of looking at their phones, looking at each other, trying to get the latest information and the most up-to-date information for our viewers so that they can pass along, I'm sure, accurate information as well. So we are still waiting to hear from them, but we are expecting just any moment now that they will be coming over to speak with us. Another group that is really waiting for information are, of course, the parents. We saw them with Mercedes McKay earlier over at the Chinooks, which is just within eye shot. I mean, we're talking 50 yards, 100 yards maybe from these football field fences. So we are just waiting to see what they're going to tell us here any moment now. I can tell you live not too terribly far from this school, and as we came over first thing this morning, headed towards the South Precinct, just about every single stoplight that I was at, somebody in an unmarked emergency vehicle would flip on their lights and would try to get around. We were seeing police hopping out of their cars, stopping traffic at the intersection, letting lines of school buses make their way to the Chinooks and to the school to pick up those students that Mercedes saw earlier and take them to a secondary location where they could meet with their parents and get home safely. It's just been such an incredibly fluid situation, and I think what we're seeing right here, right now, is a continuation of that. You know, the fact that we were originally told to go to one location, now here, now we were told it would be any moment, and it still looks like they are continuing to kind of caucus and discuss amongst themselves what kind of topics we're going to be talking about and what kind of information they're going to be sharing today.
Because obviously at some point they're going to move over and start speaking. We'll get back to Sarah in a moment, but we want to go back to Mercedes McKay.
Right. She was speaking with some people out there. Mercedes, you're near the school. Can you tell us what you're hearing?
Hey, Sydney and Rennie, just really a heartbreaking story we just heard about 15 minutes ago from a freshman. He told me they actually thought this was one of those, active shooter drills, and then they realized it was actually taking place and there was a real active shooter on their campus in their school buildings. And I'm honestly just going to let him tell you the story. I know the producers have that sound from him in the back, and just listen to it from his own words, this freshman, what he had to go through to get out of the school.
We just thought it was a regular intruder drill, but then when we started hearing sirens outside and the teachers started to even get scared, we knew that this wasn't just a regular drill and it was real. So then the teacher, she crawled over and she was asking for help to move the lockers to the door so they can't get in. And we started hearing glass breaking from the outside and gunshots outside the door. And then we tried to move out the window, jump out the window, but it was concrete at the bottom of one of the windows that was open, so we couldn't go down there. So we had to wait a little longer before the assistant principal came up to one of the windows that was locked. And when we opened it, the teacher said to come on, and we all had to jump out the window.
And you can honestly see just during those 45 seconds across the street from our photographer, Tony Chambers, and I, a woman just kind of burst out into tears. I don't know what she found out. We'll probably go over there after we get off the air with y'all. But just again, these moments are still happening here, and it's been probably an hour and a half, 90 minutes now since this all took place, but these moments of heartbreak and realization are coming to life. And to get back to that young freshman I spoke to, I mean, y'all heard it, Sydney and Rennie, just a heartbreaking situation, hearing that come out of his mouth, what they had to do, jumping out of the window. And I asked him, I said, what was running through your mind when that happened? And he just kind of just stared at me, and I said, was it fight or flight mode? And I said, what was it, fight or flight mode? And he said, yeah. So let's take a listen to kind of what he said to me in that moment. Your mom? Mm-hmm. When did she get here?
Like as soon as I got up here at the Chinooks.
What was that like to see your mom?
Hopeful.
Just like he said, those moments of hopefulness. His mom was on the phone when we spoke with him. She gave us permission to talk to him, so we didn't get a chance to hear from her. But I could tell she was on the phone with someone, probably a family member, telling them that she is with their son and he is okay at this time. I did ask him if it sunk in that it actually happened at school. Has what really happened that morning come to realization for him? And he said not yet. I asked him if he's going to feel safe at school now, if this makes him nervous, and he said yes. So just a lot of these kids are feeling this way. And again, like I said earlier, still raw emotion here. As you can see behind me, the scene is mostly cleared from our vantage point. I know Sarah Maki is around more of those flashing lights that we can see down the street, but here it is pretty clear again, just still those moments of clarity in the Chinooks parking lot when people realize what took place this morning.
Mercedes, you spoke with this young man, and one of the things he said was going into active shooter training and to move the lockers and things like that. Did you get the impression that they've actually been trained for an incident like this, been told what to do, where to go, how to react?
It seemed like they had, from my point of view, and when actually he had told me they thought it was an active shooter training, I forgot about this from my last interview when I spoke to the other freshman earlier. She had said her classroom also thought it was an active shooter training. So it seems like they have done this many times and they knew what to do. But he did say the jumping out of the window is what really got me, that just they had to just jump out of there, and it wasn't just really thinking about anything. It was just getting out as soon as possible. So it seems as though they have done these a lot, since I talked to 2 different freshmen in 2 different classrooms believes that is what was going on. From our vantage point, it seems like they have been trained on this, but I think the reality of it was really the shocking point.
Something he also said was that he heard gunshots. Were there multiple shots that you know? I mean, did he say that I heard 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, or did he go that in depth into things?
Good question, Rennie. He didn't go into clarity on that. He just said he heard gunshots. But the freshman I'd spoken to earlier as well, she said gunshots as well. So it wasn't just one gunshot, and she actually saw blood in the hallway. So it sounds like from the student standpoint that there was multiple, but again, we don't have that matter of fact from the police department just yet.
Okay. Now, where you are right now, you looked up the street, you kind of gave us the impression that things are breaking up at this point. As you look over into the parking lot, people still milling about, still active there, still police there, still students and parents, or has that pretty much cleared out?
That has pretty much cleared out, and I think it's because a lot of parents and students have heard about where parents need to pick up their students, which isn't in the Schnucks parking lot. You can see 1 school bus is still here. I believe from what I heard earlier, that is in case there are some still students lingering who need to be taken home, taken to that spot where they need to be picked up. I don't know if you can also see behind the Schnucks sign, the St. Louis Metropolitan Incident Command Center is here. There's about 4 people on the outside. We haven't been able to speak to them just yet, but they've been here about the whole entire time. But again, the Salvation Army truck is here, 1 school bus, and then that St. Louis Metropolitan Incident Command Center. But other than that, this parking lot is pretty much clear at this point. Behind my photographer, Tony Chambers, there is a group of students right now. They've been here most of the time since I've gotten here. So about the last 90 minutes, they've been over there gathered, I think just trying to process everything, talk amongst themselves and see really what happened and figure out what's going on.
Now, Mercedes, 2 of the students that you spoke with, both freshmen, these are young teenagers. One, you say, saw blood on the floor. The other heard gunshots and glass breaking right outside the door and had to escape through a window. Can you kind of talk about just how young these kids are? And once we're getting the information, we're trying to figure out what happened, but the effects of this is going to linger far beyond today.
Yeah, Sydney, that's exactly what kind of has been going through my head. And just the fact that the 2 students I have walked up to talk to have been so open to talking, and they are freshmen. These are 15, 16-year-olds. They're just starting high school, and they're having to go through this. And the freshman I spoke with earlier definitely felt that, but I'll toss it back to y'all to hear about the news conference.
Okay. We're going to go now to the news conference right now. Thank you very much, Mercedes. We're going to go back to the high school. That is where officials have gathered to bring us the information about what took place today. Let us listen in now.
We got a few people that will be speaking. At the end, we'll take just a few questions. Obviously, with these types of incidents, there's a lot of moving parts to them, a lot of things we're still gathering. So we'll take a few questions afterwards, and we'll start with the chief, who will give some brief details about what happened today.
Good morning. I'm Chief Mike Sack. This morning, about 9:10 a.m., we received a call for an active shooter at the school here at Kingshighway and Arsenal. Officers arrived within a couple minutes of the call going out, and they immediately made entry into the school. As kids were fleeing out of the building, they talked to some of the kids who told them that there was a shooter armed with a long gun. The officers began to clear the building looking for the shooter. Upon hearing gunfire, they ran to that gunfire, located the shooter, and engaged that shooter in exchange of gunfire. The suspect was struck and transported from this location, and that suspect has since been pronounced deceased. At this time, no officers are injured. We had 8 individuals from the school who were transported to local hospitals. 1 adult female has been pronounced at a local hospital. I believe that was from gunfire. We have 1 teenage female remaining here at the scene. She's also been pronounced as a result of a wound she received from gunfire. The others who were injured suffered a variety of injuries, from shrapnel injuries to gunshots. They're currently being treated. As their condition changes, we hope for the better. We'll provide that information to you as the day goes on. The building has been searched, initially by responding officers, then by our SWAT team. The bomb dog did go through the building after that. The Force Investigation Unit will be conducting the investigation here. They now control the building. They're going to be conducting their search and doing interviews. All the kids, when they were left the school, were directed to 2 particular locations. They've since been transported to Gateway School. Parents may respond to Gateway School to be reunited with their children. We do need to get the information of the kids who are in the building so we can talk to them. That may not happen today. We need to get their information, understand, but they may not be interviewed today, understanding that they just went through a traumatic incident. But we do need to identify who was in the building and where they were at. It's very important. The officers did an amazing job. I was talking to a captain who was one of the first people into the school building. He spoke about how the officers arrived quickly, made entry with no hesitation, went directly to the sound of gunfire, which is the expectation not only of the department but of the community as well, to protect our kids and our teachers in these schools that should be considered safe. This is a heartbreaking day for all of us. It's going to be tough. While on paper we might have 9 victims, 8 who are transported and 1 remain, we have hundreds of others. Everyone who survived here is going to take home trauma. Even the officers who responded here and the firefighters and the paramedics who worked on people here are going to experience some degree of trauma. It's terrible to think about. Here is a safe place where kids go to learn, to grow, to develop, and something like this happens. It's just heartbreaking. But that we're aware of, there's no additional threats, so the community is safe here. Officers are patrolling the area. We have located what we believe to be as a suspect's vehicle. We'll be going through that soon after the bomb dog or the bomb squad checks it out. But again, we believe that we have the 1 suspect recovered and that no one else is at immediate risk at this time. And officers are currently working and processing the scene and are going to work to prepare their report for this incident.
Can you tell us about the suspect, his age, his connection to the school?
Sure. The suspect appears to be about 20 years of age. We haven't positively identified him yet, and that will then lead to any relationship to a person or the school itself.
Can we hold
Chief,
the
what can you
questions
tell-
until the end? We have a few other people that need to speak. We'll take questions at the end. Dr. Isom.
So just want to say our hearts go out to the victims of this tragedy, certainly those who have lost loved ones. But as the chief has said, this is a community tragedy. All of us are impacted by horrific incidents like this. We will continue to work with the school, with the family members to complete the investigation and help with the recovery from this trauma. We know that many people will never recover, but we will try to assist them as they deal with their grief. So I do want to thank the officers for their response. I was here very quickly, and they engaged the suspect, thankfully, immediately. And so I do believe that their quick actions saved lives. So thank you to the police department, and we will continue to work to follow up and get more information about why and how this happened. So thank you.
We have George Sells from St. Louis Public Schools.
Hi. Obviously, our prayers also to the families right now. Dr. Adams is not here because he's meeting with families right now.
Dr. Adams, right here.
Well, there he is. Dr. Adams, step right up. He was not here a few minutes ago.
Dr. Adams, Superintendent.
Good morning. Obviously, today is a tragedy. 700 students were impacted by what occurred here. The police department was on the spot, our security team as well, as we're working aggressively to try to find out what occurred and to make sure that this does not happen again. I'm really pleased that the faculty and staff rallied around getting students out of the building as quickly as possible. The building right now is a crime scene, and obviously we'll be working with families to get them the materials that are left in the building and also to reopen the building as soon as possible. I want to thank the police department and all of those parties that came to the table to support the 700 students in this building. So thank you very much.
Mayor Jones will be speaking next.
I visited this school on the first day and talked to the students and how excited they were about their upcoming school year. They were bright-eyed, bushy-tailed. We laughed, we sang, we danced. And now to be here for such a devastating and traumatic situation breaks my heart, especially as a mother. My son called because they got the news at his school as well. And he says, "Mommy, you sound stressed." I'm stressed and I'm heartbroken. I'm heartbroken for these families who send their children to our schools hoping that they will be safe. Our children shouldn't have to experience this. They shouldn't have to go through active shooter drills in case something happens. And unfortunately, that happened today. I also want to thank our first responders who ran in and made sure our babies were safe and took care of the situation sooner rather than later. And I'm sure that everyone involved is going to have to deal with the trauma that will reverberate across our community in the days and the months to come. This is just so unfair. It's so unfair. My heart and prayers go out to the families again. And I want to thank the school district, again, and our first responders for running towards danger to save our children, to save our staff and students. Thank you.
So today is one of those days that we pray never happens across this country, but parents wake up every day in this community praying that it's not their school, it's not their child, it's not the situation of our community. Well, today was one of those days. We want to thank, again, our first responders, but we also want to thank those teachers and school staff and administrators that were in place and moving and ready. That were there to support the students and those that are there right now with the students. Our office would like to make sure that families know that we are standing with you, that our phone lines are open. If you don't know who to talk to, you can call our office. The phone number is 314-955-9980. It's 314-955-9980. If you need resources, let me say to our students and to the faculty, if you need help, it's okay to not be okay. It's okay to not hold it to yourself. We can help. So reach out to our office. We want to be there to support you. And our hearts go out to each and every one of you. But as we're thinking about how to help, we will also be here on the ground to help. Our team is here, and we will continue to be here for each and every one of you.
All right, we'll open up for a few questions.
Chief, what can you tell us about the people who are deceased? We've heard one may have been a teacher. Are we to imply, or do you know if the other was a student?
Right, so the adult at the school, the adult female, once we can make notification of next of kin, we'll identify her relationship to the school. But at the moment, we're going to kind of respect that family and give them some time. We're just waiting for notification. And for the teen who remained here, the same for that. Hopefully we'll have more information about their relationships. I do want to say...
How did the shooter get in?
I do want... Yeah, that's a good question. I was just going to address that. The doors were locked. All right, the doors were locked. Don't be confused. The school was closed and the doors were locked. The security staff did an outstanding job identifying the suspect's efforts to enter and immediately notified other staff and ensured that we were contacted. It was that timely response by that security officer, the fact that the door did cause pause for the suspect, that bought us some time. So, but yes, the doors were locked.
Oh, I'm sorry, I'm confused. The doors were locked. How did he get it?
We're not going to talk about how the suspect gained entry.
What kind of security is in place here at the school on a day-to-day basis?
So, doctor?
All of our high schools are housed with security. In this particular building, there was 7 active security in the building on today. And so they were located at the place where kids are coming in, coming through the metal detectors. That's where they were today on both sides of the building. But there were 7 active officers on site today.
Can you clarify how many were transported?
8 individuals were transported, including the suspect.
What room was he in when the officers confronted him?
So that it was on the 3rd floor, is in a room. I don't know if it was a classroom. I believe it was, but you know, it just all kind of merged. I haven't been in. You know, it is a crime scene, so I don't want to go in there.
Some of the survivors have told KMOX that they leaped out of a 3rd floor window to get away. Can you confirm that? Did people jump out of the windows to get away?
We're not aware yet. Now, understanding that hundreds of kids fled out of the building, which they should have done. And thank God again for the teachers and the adults in the building who helped facilitate their escape. I don't know the means by which they left. As we go through our interview process, we'll learn more about that, but it's possible that they did do that.
Thank you, everybody. Thank you.
Do we know if any of the victims are targeted?
We won't know anything about that until the suspect has been identified. We know that suspect's relationship to the school and the victims.
Did he fire the officers? I'm sorry if I missed that.
Yeah, there was an exchange of gunfire.
Okay.
All right, you are watching a live news conference from the city of St. Louis. This is a staging area that is right behind Central Visual and Performing Arts. We just got an update from police, from the mayor of St. Louis, and also from the superintendent of St. Louis schools about a shooting. At least 9 victims total in this shooting. The shooter, a 20-year-old male, among the dead. Rennie.
It was a very grim situation. We have 3 people who have passed away. 1 teenage female who still remains on campus at this time. Another adult female was also shot and transported to the hospital where she also passed away. 8 people in all were transported. We learned that the school was locked, the doors were locked, and the school was secure before the shooter made entry. A security person saw the shooter outside. Now at this time, police will not tell us how the shooter eventually ended up inside of the school, but this happened just after 9 o'clock this morning. Once the initial gunfire was heard, there was then an exchange with police inside the building, and that is when the shooter was struck and then taken to the hospital where he later passed away. We know that the shooter has not been identified as far as name, but they're only saying a 20-year-old male or in their 20s.
And so this is happening at Central VPA. Again, if you're just joining us, Kingshighway and Arsenal, as you mentioned, right after 9 a.m. And the initial reports that we're getting from both students and police is that upon hearing this gunfire, police immediately went into the school and went toward the gunfire, engaged the suspect who was carrying a long gun. There was an exchange of gunfire, and that's when the suspect was killed. And we know that we'll be given more information as soon as it's available. But at this point, St. Louis police are asking us not to interview students, to give families and students the time and the space they need to deal with all of this. They need to identify now who is still in the building. They're trying to catch up with all of the students, many of whom jumped out of windows to save themselves. Teachers were helping students move lockers in front of doors. And then students were opening windows, and it would be quite a long jump. We were told by one student, Adrian Brody, earlier. We have parts of an interview with him that we will bring to you. And he said the cement was so far down, but then another teacher came in and opened a different window, and they were all told to jump, and they did.
Well, obviously, you get the feeling that the students there had some type of active shooter training. The fact that the teacher said, move the lockers by the door so that they could become secure. But most of the students are doing their best to try to leave. One of the things that really touched me from the police chief was that everyone will be suffering some type of trauma from this. 700 students. They may have not been anywhere near the shooting, but to be a part of something like this is going to affect them for a long time. Congresswoman Cori Bush also pointed out that for the students to understand, quote, it's okay not to be okay, because there's going to be trauma, there's going to be stress that they're going to deal with after this. We saw Mayor Jones also on hand, said she spoke with her son by telephone, saying that she was stressed and heartbroken for the families that are being involved, because there are still people arriving in this area to find out what has happened to their loved one. The Schnucks parking lot that was just a block or so away from the school itself was a meeting point for the students to take a bus down the Gateway Stem, but we did see a lot of parents show up on scene there, and that's where you saw so much of the raw emotion. We heard in our ears a woman scream out when she came up there and then broke down, and people came over and tried to comfort her.
Mayor Tashora Jones, Rennie, calling it a devastating and traumatic situation. And she says she is a mother. Her son goes to a St. Louis school, and even students and parents at other schools, this has caused them so much heartache and concern and worry, but particularly the parents and the families who have students at this school and collegiate school, which is, we should say, right next door.
Yeah.
There are basically two campuses side by side at Central VPA, and then there's Collegiate School of Medicine and Science, and I'm not getting the name exactly right, I'll work on that, but both of these campuses are side by side. The students do interact, and people, the parents, have been rushing, with students at both of these schools, have been rushing to the scene to be reunited with their students.
We want to go back to the high school campus right now. That's where Sarah Maki is. She was in attendance for this news conference that took place. And Sarah, first of all, it was a very short news conference, yet at the same time, a very emotional news conference.
Oh yeah, Rennie, emotions were definitely running high amongst the people who were there giving the information, who have been kind of coming to terms with it over the last couple of hours, as well as us sitting here in the media taking it in for the first time. I think it was short by design because there's still not a lot that they can share. They said that they're still working on notifying family members. They're still working on figuring out some of the logistics of just what happened here. And of course, they're still trying to talk to so many students who we've been hearing from, who were inside the building at the time but left as fast as they could following their active shooter training that they've been getting basically all of their lives at this point. I think that when we heard that information, it kind of came at you in waves, right? When we found out that this was a long gun, a shooter with a long gun, you could feel the energy shift. You could see people becoming uncomfortable. The same thing when they were letting us know that there are deceased victims at this point. We heard then from the mayor, who, as you said, kind of recapped her own personal experience as a mother and as the mayor here on the first day of school, celebrating with some of these same kids just months ago, and now having to be here on the football field, giving a very different kind of speech and very different kind of reaction in this situation. We do still have some of the law enforcement even here behind us who rushed into the building, who, by all accounts, were doing what they were supposed to do, engaging the shooter and making sure that they could get everything locked down as quickly as possible. Again, we are still waiting to find out some more information. We're going to be able to give that to you guys just a little bit later.
Sarah, I was able to listen into the news conference while everyone was speaking, and something that the chief said was that the school was secure, that the doors were locked, and that a security person saw the shooter trying to enter, and that's how they're able to make such a quick response. Can you recap that for me if you remember what was being said?
Well, I think that that's kind of one of the biggest questions. That was a question that was posed a couple of times. Exactly how did this person get into the building? And the chief said he wasn't going to go into this at this point, but he did say that all of the exterior doors had been closed. So we're going to continue to push on that. We're going to try to figure out more information, because I think that right now is one of the biggest questions, as is who exactly was the shooter, and what was, if any, a relationship to the student body here or to the school grounds.
Sarah, thank you so much for being there, and we'll probably be checking back with you before we're done with our coverage. Sarah Maki reporting from the news conference that took place on the school campus. We have another live picture that we want to go to now. This is Congresswoman Cori Bush, who also arrived for the news conference alongside the mayor and the police chief, and she's there. And I don't know who she's speaking with at this time, but I imagine that it's probably some parents, if not relatives or teachers or someone who wanted to come to the scene and find out what was going on. This appears to be
It's a
in the
live
Schnucks
picture from the
parking lot.
Schnucks
Yeah.
parking lot. And that was initially one of the staging areas for students and for staff. That has since changed and been shifted over to Gateway STEM on McCree. However, a lot of the school buses and transportation to be able to get students home or where they need to be were being staged at the Schnucks. And so these two locations have been used interchangeably as staging locations for students and staff. And that's why you see these different scenes that are developing around Central VPA.
And if you don't know where this is Arsenal and Kingshighway. Earlier, everything was pretty much on lockdown. Pretty much the neighborhood. We had police vehicles all over the place, streets that were closed off. At this point, I haven't seen what appears to be open streets. We were telling you earlier, a couple of hours into this, to not go into the area so that the police could do their job. It appears that they have the situation secure, but the school continues to be a crime scene at this time. We have not heard anything as to what will now go on with the students for the rest of the week. Will they return to campus there? Will they have the week off? Will they go remote learning? Those are some details that obviously will be worked out as we go through the day today. Recapping one more time, 8 people were transported from the school to the hospital. We know that the shooter, an adult male around the age of 20, was shot and killed in a gunfire exchange and then was pronounced at the hospital. We know that a female in her teens was also shot and was killed on campus and was not transported. We know that the shooter died at the hospital. We know that an adult female was also shot on campus and later passed away at the hospital.
It is just a tragic and heartbreaking day for not just the city of St. Louis, not just St. Louis Public Schools, but for our entire region. And it's, you know, we've heard a lot of emotion in the voices of the people who have been sharing what happened to them, in the reporters of ours, our colleagues who are on the scene. Adrian Brody is a student who talked with our Mercedes McKay earlier. He described exactly what happened to him. He was one of the students that jumped out of a window. And here he is telling us about what he knows about the gunman in this situation.
Intruder broke into her room, then the intruder said, "Get ready to die," and they shot one of the students and the teacher, and the rest of the students jumped out the window. It was on the 3rd story.
It's chilling to
It's
think
traumatic.
about.
It is just a traumatic and devastating. Those are the words that come to mind. You're in a school, you think you're safe, the school was locked.
It's the trauma that's going to carry on for this, because you had a room full of kids who witnessed this. And yes, they were able to get out, you know, and get away, but you've seen it. And it's the stuff of nightmares. It's the stuff that's going to have kids, you know, upset, maybe not wanting to go back to school, maybe not be in crowded situations. As Congresswoman Cori Bush said, it is okay not to be okay. So there are resources available. If your child is someone that was inside the school and isn't feeling quite okay at this time, reach out to someone and try to get them the help that they need, because these are things that are going to stick with them for undoubtedly a lifetime. You heard the police chief say that everyone is suffering, our community is suffering, and that this is a trauma that not only are the students going to walk away with, the teachers going to walk away with, but so are the responders that came there, the police officers, the fire people. Everyone that showed up at that scene saw what they saw, and this is not something that we've seen in the St. Louis area that I could think of at one of our schools.
You know, I'm racking my brain, and it's difficult for me right now to recall anything of this magnitude. This is, you know, something that we see play out in other cities, and I think in your mind you do say, you know, it would never happen here, but here we sit this morning with this news. And I want to say that for every student and parent at this point, if you're a student in the St. Louis area, in the bi-state, and have heard about this right now, this is disturbing for them as well, for people who don't even go to school at Central VPA. So you're going to need to have a conversation with your student about safety, about their concerns, and doing a lot of listening is really what you want to do right now.
Yeah,
Let
and-
your student
yeah.
talk about how they're feeling, and then you can also share your feelings as well. And I know at the news conference, as you mentioned, there was a reference to help is available right now. We're going to work to get that phone number so we can put it on the screen for you, because that's how important this is. But we also know in the hours ahead, Rennie, that many more organizations will come forward with
Yes.
mental health
Yes.
resources. And
Yes.
again, we will make sure we bring that to you on air, online, on the 5 on Your Side app. We'll have that information readily available.
It is important to know that it's okay not to feel okay. We do have some reaction from other students from the high school. We want to play that for you right now.
Like, we heard shots from behind the building, like they bust the windows out first from behind the building. And then they had shot our classroom door down. And a man opened the door, he was like, y'all finna die today. And he shot the teacher first, and when she fell to the floor, then another boy got shot in the hand and he was bleeding. And 2 other girls got shot, and then when he left the room, we opened the window and we jumped out.
They banging on Mr. Williams' door. They shot like 4 times. It was a white man. He said, all y'all are going to die. Everyone is scared. It was too much going on, and I'm just glad that I'm okay.
Okay, you heard the man say that?
Yes, with my own ears.
After that, they put the fire alarm in. We had back-to-back drills before, so I walked out the door, walking to the hallway. Somebody behind me like, stop. I'm like, what? They like, ain't nobody coming out of the classroom in the hallway. So when I paid attention, ain't nobody coming out of the classroom but us. As soon as they said that, all you heard was pow, 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 pow. So I hear, we run back in the classroom, lock the door, and just stayed in the corner until we heard the police come knock on the door.
So we just heard some eyewitness accounts from kids that were inside the school when all of this took place. And you heard them make reference to, how a person looked and who a person was as far as their positions. At this time, this is not things that are confirmed, okay? The police have not said, here who these people are. So while we did hear from the eyewitnesses, let us wait till we get the information from police officials themselves. But very brave kids to talk about what took place. And just to hear the accounts, it's a frightening scenario to think about, because I think you sit there going, I'm trapped. Where do I go? What do I do? And if someone did indeed make the threat that everybody was going to pass away today.
And was holding a gun while doing it.
A long rifle, a long gun.
A long gun.
A long gun at this time.
And so you make a great point, Rennie. Police will be interviewing all of the eyewitnesses, many of the students at the school. The school will be locked down. We have not received this information, but for the foreseeable future.
Yeah, it's a crime scene at this point.
It is, and there's a very thorough investigation underway right now, and part of that is having conversations and interviewing students like the ones you just saw, who are at the same time dealing with the trauma and the pain of what they just saw and experience themselves.
And I think one of the things that helped cut down the numbers of people being injured is the fact that there was quick action. We've just covered a shooting at a school in Texas, and we know that first responders hesitated and waited and waited, and then eventually made entry. We know that the situation here was different because someone saw a person trying to come into the school with a long gun, and so they were able to respond quickly and take this person down.
Police Chief Michael Sack said that in his news conference, that police went in with no hesitation. They went toward the gunfire, and you're exactly right. You hate to think what might have happened had that response not been what it was.
Yeah, you go back to the threat that the one person said that the shooter made to the students, and you think, okay, this could have been much, much worse. And this happened shortly after school began. It was after 9 o'clock this morning that it happened, and the shooter was shot in an exchange of bullets, and then later pronounced dead at the hospital. We do know that a female adult has also passed away. She was also pronounced dead at the hospital, but a teenage female was shot and killed inside the school. And our last account is she has not been taken away as of yet. We do know that 8 people were transported from the school. 6 people are hurt. Of the people that are injured, we know that there's gunshot wounds. We know that there's shrapnel. We know that someone suffered cardiac arrest. So at this time, we're still waiting to hear more. We heard a brief news conference. Not a whole lot was told to us. We heard raw emotions. We know that around 700 students were between the two campuses at the time that all this was going on. We want to go now to our Alex Fees, who is standing by with Corey Bush. Alex?
Rennie, I'm here with Congresswoman Corey Bush here in St. Louis. Congresswoman Bush, what do you know about what happened today?
We know that there was an active shooter situation here at Central Visual and Performing Arts High School, a school that that many of us have frequented in this community through the years, and we know that there are we have 9 people who have been either injured, or we have 2 that we know that are deceased. We know that the shooter is deceased. But we also know that there are children and families. There are students right now who are crying out for help, and that's what we've been out here doing. We've been meeting with the students and the families. Students who have said, that was my friend,
What about, I saw you coming from the Schnucks parking lot here along Arsenal. That was one of the reunification
Yes.
points. Have you talked to victims' families?
Yes, right here on this Schnucks parking lot, we've been going from family to family, talking with the students. Some of the students are still here because they don't feel ready to leave yet, but they're grieving because this is still the scene. Some of them are saying, hey, all of my things were left inside the school, but I can't even go in because it's a crime, scene.
Sure, it's a crime scene. I'm sure a lot of those people are still in shock.
Yeah.
There's probably not a lot you can do for them at this point, this soon after.
No, but what we are saying is we're here, we're on the ground with you, we're connecting people to resources, we're telling people to reach out to our office at 314-955-9980. If you need help with therapy, we want to make sure people get immediate help now. We'll be working with the school district, but our office can help. We want to help.
Okay, Congresswoman Bush, are you collaborating with local first responders? Do you know anything more about the scene inside?
No, I heard the same thing in the press conference that everyone else heard. We are working with local law enforcement, which we always do. We'll keep in contact with the first responders, and we are about to actually head over to Gateway STEM and meet with those families because there are still students and families over there with counselors.
Right, because that's one of the other reunification points, right?
Yes, it is.
Congresswoman Corey Bush, thank you very much.
Thank you.
I appreciate it. So Congresswoman Corey Bush joining us live here this afternoon on the scene of a mass shooting here in South St. Louis. I'm Alex Fees reporting live.
All right, thank you, Alex. Alex, of course, on the scene there at Schnucks, where the students had gathered to take buses and go. And I was going to grab him real quick before he left. I just wanted to get an idea of all the buses departed the parking lot at this time, but you still see people who are in that area. Maybe there's folks who are coming by just to look around and see what took place. It looks like the street is indeed open. That had been closed for most of the morning.
Well, and at this point, I'm sure there are parents that maybe are just arriving. And as we've been telling you, the school administrators have been wanting to keep detailed lists of who's where. And I'm sure they're checking students off if they're being picked up by their parents. We've been hearing a little bit about that process, that there was a manifest maybe of some kind that they were working off of, just so we can make sure everybody's okay. But as Congresswoman Bush mentioned, it's almost like some students don't want to leave. They're processing the grief there.
Yeah.
They want to stay where this terrible shooting happened and talk with others and try to make sense of what's going on. That makes sense as well.
There might be a comfort in numbers and not going off by yourself, but to stand with friends and discuss what took place and help people feel better about the future. It's a tough thing to think about when you realize that this takes place at a school and 3 people will not be going home tonight. 3 people won't see loved ones again, and loved ones won't see their person again. We saw people arrive in that area where the school buses are. We saw at least 2 or 3 people break down. We also saw immediately people coming over and to comfort them and to make them feel better. If you know someone who was in that school around that school, or even if you have a young kid that says, I don't know if I want to go to school. It's happened again. And this time it's happened in our neighborhood, in St. Louis, where we live. We're not talking about an area in Texas. We're not talking about Connecticut. We're not talking about California, some far off land. We're talking about right here at home, Kingshighway and Arsenal. We have a number on the screen right now, and I'm going to take my glasses off to read it.
314-955-9980. That is the number to call if you need mental health assistance or assistance of any kind. That's the number to Congresswoman Bush's office. She just mentioned it in her interview with Alex Fees. But as we've been talking, we know other organizations will be offering mental health resources. We will bring those to you on air and online as well when we get them.
It doesn't really take a whole lot as far as to seek help. You know, a couple of Google searches will help you find someone in our area that you can call or reach out to make sense of it all. And I don't think you can ever make sense of it all, but at least you could find some level of area where you could cope and move on with your life and understand that this is a part of our area today. It is comforting to know that the students there had been trained at some level in active shooter training.
Well, and many thought that's what was going on.
They thought it was a drill.
When they heard the gunshots, yes, that it was some kind of active shooter drill.
Yeah, and the one
this morning
student,
it was real.
Yeah, the one student told us that once they heard this, the teacher immediately told them to take the lockers, move the lockers towards the door, and then they went to the windows. But the windows were locked. There was one window that was open, but it was too far of a drop for them to jump out. But eventually someone came and opened up another window, and they were able to make exit at that time. Recapping again, we know that 3 people died in this incident this morning. We know that 6 others were hurt, varying degrees of injuries, from gunshots to shrapnel to cardiac arrest, and we don't know what else has taken place, but you can only imagine in the panic of trying to get out of there what could have happened. We know that the shooter had a long gun, and all of this took place shortly after 9 o'clock this morning inside the school, and that is where police were able to get there quickly and exchange gunfire with the shooter, take the shooter down. The shooter was then transported to the hospital where that shooter passed away.
St. Louis Police Chief Michael Sack calling this a heartbreaking day, yet the stories that we're hearing come out about the police response are that officers immediately rushed toward the shooting. That's when they engaged the shooter who had the long gun, and that's when the shooter was killed or suffered the wound that would prove to be fatal. He was taken to the hospital. We're hearing from Chief Sack that this was a 20-year-old male, and yet we're not really getting many more details at all. Police are in the early stages of this investigation. They tried to share with us as much as they could, and we know that in the coming hours and days, we will be, of course, getting much more information about exactly what happened.
Yeah. Well, once they know the identity of the shooter, they can then go through his background and find out, was there any more in this particular person's life that led them to the school, to this situation, or was it just a random act that this person decided that today was the day that they were going to go and do something tragic like this?
And how he got into a locked school. The police were very firm about the fact that the school itself was locked. So you don't know if he shot his way through. You know, we're also waiting to hear that.
It sounds like there were a lot of gunshots from the witnesses that we've heard from students inside the school, that there were a number of gunshots that were exchanged, and we don't know if that was the exchange with the shooter and the police, or if that was the shooter firing off shots inside the school or trying to make entry as well.
And we should also remind you that this is sort of a side-by-side campus, Central Visual and Performing Arts, with Collegiate right next door, and so these two schools exist side by side, yet the actual shooting happened inside Central VPA.
Yeah, it has been a, you know, I was on the air this morning at 4:30 till 7, and had a number of stories about shootings that had just recently taken place just yesterday in St. Louis, from Sunday morning until Sunday evening just after 11 o'clock, and over that course of time, 3 people have been shot and killed in our city. We know that gun violence has become an ongoing issue in our city. We know that a number of kids have been shot randomly. We know some kids accidentally have shot themselves.
Well, the numbers of children that have either died or been injured in by gunshots is at a record level,
Yes.
Rennie.
Yeah.
In the hundreds
Sadly,
for this year alone.
Yeah. Sadly, that is the case. And, and it's one of the things about our city that we don't want to speak of and we need to address. And hopefully heads will start coming together and actually take some action, because for it now to take place inside of a school, inside of a secure building, a place where children go to be safe, to be educated, to advance themselves and advance our community, for something like this to happen there, it just lets us know once again that it can happen anywhere, that it isn't something that takes place somewhere else. This is now taking place where we live. And it's just good that we had a security guard there who took action quickly, saw the shooter try to make entry, alerted police, and police were on scene very quickly.
A heartbreaking day in St. Louis. Mayor DeShora Jones calling it a devastating and traumatic situation. She herself is a mother with a student that goes to a St. Louis public school. We're going to take a live picture. We have some video outside Barnes Jewish Hospital, and this is where many of the victims were taken. There are 6 people, 6 others who were hurt besides the 3 people who died. 1 person suffered a cardiac arrest. At least 2 students were among those injured. And again, we are waiting for information on exactly the conditions of the 6 people, who these people are, and we can bring that to you, of course, that information as soon as we get it.
I think one of the things that may have helped with the medical situation as far as taking care of the injured is that the school is on Kingshighway, only a few blocks, I'm guessing a couple of miles from Barnes Jewish Hospital. So they're able to bring the people there quickly, get medical attention to them fast, because if you're dealing with gunshots, you're dealing with some traumatic injuries. Trauma center there that we had video of, you just looked at, that lets you know that they're able to get there in a timely fashion and be taken care of by doctors and hopefully life-saving situations. But we do know that 3 people did lose their lives in this, and that includes the shooter, who had a long gun, identified as a 20-something-year-old male. That's all we know at this time. We don't know who the adult female was, what her position was with the school. Police have not released that as of yet. We also do not know about the female, who was a teenager, who was also shot and killed, but pronounced dead at the school. We heard from Congresswoman Cori Bush, who once again reiterated the point that if you don't feel right, to seek help.
And the video we're seeing here, Rennie, school buses continue to arrive at Gateway STEM, which has been one of the staging areas to reunite students with families. The buses have been staged at the Schnucks nearby, and they've been going over to Gateway STEM to take students who need transportation to where they need to go. So it does look like at this point that is happening, as soon as the school administrator can check off their list who they know is safe and has either been met by a parent or has transportation, they're doing that. And it's just going to be a long and we know very thorough process.
It's going to be a long
time to make sure that everyone
Yeah.
gets home safely.
Now the school, Gateway STEM, is located at 5101 McCree. And if you're heading there or haven't heard there or heard from your student yet, reach out to your student, your child, once again, before heading down that way. I just want to give you an idea of what it's like there. It is a very narrow and small street. It dead ends at the high school there. So traffic really can't make its way in and out of there in a very efficient way. It could get backed up. We know that Kingshighway is also a very crowded thoroughfare, one of the busiest streets in St. Louis, and a lot of folks will be coming that way who have nothing to do with the situation, maybe just making their way to and from in their own personal lives. So keep that in mind. So reach out first, hopefully via telephone, via text, get a hold of the school or school officials to get a better idea of where things are there. Now, the school itself, the building has been secured. It is on lockdown as the investigation continues. We're also told that the bomb dogs went through the building as well to make sure that there was nothing left behind that could also cause more damage in this situation.
Yeah, this is a crime scene and will be treated as one for probably a couple of days, I might imagine. We have not heard anything about plans for students in the days to come, when the school might reopen, or how students might be educated once classes start again, whether
Yeah.
it would be online or
I would guess that
at a different
at this
school.
time, that's probably the least of their
The
worries.
least of their
as
worries,
To, as to how
correct.
they move on from here. I think right now it's about the welfare, especially the mental welfare of the children who were there. Because as we said earlier, about 700 students were on campus or between the two campuses when the shooting took place. A shooting that did not last very long. Police were able to respond very quickly and took care of the situation, took the shooter down. The shooter then later died at the hospital. One of 3 people who have passed away from this school shooting. We do know, as Kay said, 6 others were injured and also taken to the hospital with varying degree of injuries. We will know more about that as we move on, because the news conference that we had was a very short news conference. Not a whole lot was said outside of the expression of taking the shooter down, students being aware of an active shooter situation, and the fact that everyone right now is dealing with some level of trauma who witnessed what took place. We cannot tell you enough that if you don't feel right now, to call that number on the screen, 314-955-9980, because that will lead you to resources to help you feel better.
All right, we are following breaking news right now in South St. Louis as we begin 5 on your side at noon. 3 people have been killed. Others are injured in a shooting at Central Visual and Performing Arts High School. That's at Kingshighway and Arsenal, just west of Tower Grove Park. Police say the shooter is among the dead, along with an adult woman and a teenage girl. We have team coverage. Let's begin with Mercedes McKay at Central VPA. Mercedes.
Kay, it's been an emotional scene here all day long. I'm actually here at the Schnucks, which this was the first place that parents were asked to come pick up their kids. Now they're asking everybody that has a parent at Central VPA to go to Gateway STEM. That's where everyone will be reuniting. You can see behind me, there is one police car that's a command center. They're passing out water, snacks, but earlier today, about an hour ago, this was a completely different scene. Trucks were lined up all around, fire trucks, EMS, police cars, and honestly, just walking into it, it was very emotional for even myself. I watched people run past me trying to reunite with their kids in this parking lot. There were a lot of tears, there were a lot of cries, and those tears and cries are still happening. Probably about 30 minutes ago, Kay, we witnessed someone just burst out into tears. We don't know why. They may have found out somebody that they knew was one of those victims, but it's just so heartbreaking to see. I've spoken to many kids and parents today, a couple of freshmen actually, so just imagine a 15, 16-year-old going to school, witnessing all of this. One of the freshmen I spoke to, her mom actually told me it was so terrifying for her because she actually just put her kid back into school. She's been homeschooled this whole time. That 15-year-old talked to me just about how this needs to stop. This is a 15-year-old just making sure that people know that this gun violence needs to stop. I also spoke with another freshman who told me every single thing he heard and saw and experienced in that school. Actually, the kind of common theme around here is that many people thought this was an active shooter, from students, even from teachers. That's what they believed was happening. So take a listen to what freshman Adrian Bolden had to say about his experience this morning.
We just thought it was a regular intruder drill, but then when we started hearing sirens outside and the teachers started to even get scared, we knew that this wasn't just a regular drill and it was real. So then the teacher, she crawled over and she was asking for help to move the lockers to the door so they can't get in. And we started hearing glass breaking from the outside and gunshots outside the door. And then we tried to move out the window, jump out the window, but it was concrete at the bottom of one of the windows that was open, so we couldn't go down there. So we had to wait a little longer before the assistant principal came up to one of the windows that was locked. And when we opened it, the teacher said to come on, and we all had to jump out the window.
Just heartbreaking. Imagine a 15-year-old, you're having to jump out of the window to make sure you're safe. And he actually told me, I said, what was going through your head? Was it kind of fight or flight? And he said, yes, that's exactly what was happening. I asked him what it was like to see his mom and hug her, and he said it was reassuring and just signs of hope. And I actually got a response from a tweet I tweeted out earlier when this scene was really active from a parent, and he sent me screenshots actually of his daughter texting him just saying like, hey, there's an active shooter drill right now. And he's like, yeah, I know. This, like, we heard that there was going to be an active shooter drill, and then you see the text of him just saying, okay, wait, now I'm nervous. So this seems to be a theme case. So many people thought this was an active shooter drill, which is the reality of our schools now. They're having to practice these all day long, but then it really sinks in when it's actually happening and it's not a drill anymore, okay?
You hear over and over again from this morning, Mercedes. Thank you so much, Mercedes McKay, reporting live from the Schnooks in South St. Louis.
Our team coverage continues now with our Sarah Maki, who was on hand for a news conference with St. Louis officials, including the mayor, the police chief, and Congresswoman Cori Bush. Sarah?
Right, Rennie, that press conference today was quite short and quite emotional, but I think that the shortness of it was probably by design. Officials here saying that there is so much information that they still can't go over, and so much that they still at this time don't even know. Now, we do know that there are 2 victims who were killed out here today, and the gunman as well has been shot and killed at this time. But we are still waiting for some answers that will likely come as the police are now able to notify the next of kin for the 2 women that were killed. We're told that one of them was an adult female, the other a juvenile girl who was killed and pronounced dead here on scene. Some of the biggest questions we have today are, who is this shooter? How did this person gain access to the building? And what, if any, relationship might there have been between the shooter, the staff here, the school population, or this school property in general? All of those, they were pretty tight-lipped on, but they were very clear that they said that the exterior doors to the building were locked. So we're trying to parse what that means. We're trying to figure out more information and trying to get some information from Chief Mike Sack. He said, though, that this morning they first got a call to come out to the shooting right around 9:10, and within minutes their officers were here as the kids were already starting to flee the building. He said that their officers were able to talk to some of those children who let them know that the gunman had a long gun and was still inside the building. They were able to find the gunman. They said that there was some firing back and forth. Obviously, the shooter was killed. Now, police, they say, are going to continue to try and reach as many people as they can, because we heard that so many kids were inside the building but able to leave following their training. We also heard today from the mayor about this situation. She said she was notified and horrified because she was here for the first day of classes, a very different situation. I want you to hear what she had to say.
I visited this school on the first day and talked to the students and how excited they were about their upcoming school year. They were bright-eyed, bushy-tailed. We laughed, we sang, we danced. And now to be here for such a devastating and traumatic situation breaks my heart, especially as a mother.
That last line, especially as a mother, she also talked about hearing from her son immediately after this all happened about his thoughts on it. She said that there's going to be a lot of healing for even the people who survived out here, the people who might have walked away with no physical injuries. As I was sitting in our news car working on this story, one of her staff came by. They said that they're still working on getting mental health resources put together, getting hotlines up and running so that people will be able to reach out. As soon as we have that information as well, we'll, of course, be able to share that with our viewers.
And Sarah, what can you describe the situation at the school right now? You are right outside. Are there still students there, and who are you still seeing at the scene?
No, the people you see mostly are first responders. We've actually still seen some police walking around with their own rifles. We have seen just some people kind of continuing to keep this area locked down. We originally had our press conference on the football fields, which are behind us. The gates to those have once again been locked up. They are asking people to stay away if possible, as they still have so much investigating to do.
Sarah,
and
one
it
more
is, of
question.
course, an active crime scene.
One more question before you go. They didn't speak for very long. Any ideas whether or not there will be another news conference later this afternoon, later this evening?
That we don't know right now, Rennie. We are going to try and figure that out and see if there's any more information. They said that they had a lot to go through over these next couple of minutes, hours. So I would assume that they're going to be handling some of those next of kin notifications. First and foremost, those will be their priorities.
All right, thank you, Sarah. Sarah Mocker reporting live from the school itself where the shooting took place around 9:10 this morning. Thank you, Sarah.
Yeah, it has been 3 hours now. Now, students were told to go to nearby Gateway STEM school to meet their parents after that shooting.
And that's where Christine Byers is for us live this morning with that part of the story. Christine?
Thanks, Rennie. Well, parents are still reuniting with students here at Gateway. They've been filing in along McCree Avenue all morning long after what one student told me was complete chaos. Multiple school buses were rolling along, bringing students and staff from Collegiate and VPA. Parents of Gateway were told to go to the front of the building. Students where the shooting happened went to the back. Elijah Pullman is a 15-year-old sophomore at Collegiate. He told me he saw a young girl bleeding in a hallway not far from where he had just been in English class when he was evacuated.
Intercom our code for, and there's an intruder in the building. And after that, and we all thought it's a drill at first, like, okay, it's just a surprise drill, okay, we're all good. No, it's a real thing. She said over the com, yes, this is real, there's an intruder. Please be careful. And all hell just kind of breaks loose.
Now, Elijah's younger brother and older sister also go to school there with him. They had an emotional reunion with their grandfather in the back of this building just moments ago. We'll hear much more from them later today. Live outside of Gateway, Christine Byers, 5 on your side.
Hey, Christine, before you get away, you were talking about students were telling you things were chaotic, but behind you right now, things seem very calm. Are parents and kids and guardians, all that, still coming and going and reuniting with one another?
Yes, they absolutely are. As we're standing here, there are cars passing by, coming to get more students and coming to do more reunifications. Again, at the front of the building, parents from Gateway are coming. That's not where the shooting happened, but that's where everyone's being reunited. So a bunch of parents from Gateway are just coming to get their students as well. But the reunifications from the students that were in the shooting are happening in the back of this building where our cameras are not allowed.
All right, thank you, Christine. Christine Byers reporting for us live outside of Gateway STEM. We're going to go to some reactions now from local politicians. This is from Missouri Senator Josh Hawley reacting to what happened today. Quote, devastating news in St. Louis. I'm grateful for the swift response of local law enforcement. My office is in contact with local authorities, and we stand ready to offer all assistance possible.
We've also heard from Senator Roy Blunt saying tragic news from Central Visual and Performing Arts High School in St. Louis. Thank you to law enforcement officers who quickly responded.
And Democratic candidate for U.S. Senate, Trudy Bush Valentine, says, I am heartbroken this morning to see reports of a school shooting in South St. Louis. As a mother and a grandmother myself, I'm shocked and praying for all those affected, students, parents, faculty, and in the community. I'm grateful to brave law enforcement for their quick response.
All right, well, we want to go out to 5 on your side's Alex Fees. He has been live in South St. Louis all morning long and continues to report for us from the scene. Alex, what are you seeing where you are at Gateway, at Central rather?
Well, Kay, good afternoon. What I have for you are some eyewitness accounts from some of the CVPA students who heard shots fired inside of those classrooms. Now, I was making my way here a couple hours ago and saw students and parents gathering in the Schnucks parking lot there at Arsenal and Hereford, and got out and interviewed some of those students. We're going to hear from Keyshawn Brooks, Drea Luster, and Maurice McFadden. Again, they're CVPA students and eyewitnesses. They were inside classrooms when they heard shots fired.
Oh. Okay. Thank you very much, Alex Fees reporting. We're having conversation here as to where we're going next. This is a fluid situation, so please bear with us. There's a lot happening.
Mercedes McKay is out in South St. Louis as well. She has been at the Schnucks where there have been buses staging all morning long, helping to transport students who need to get home or to another location. So let's go live to Mercedes with more on what's going on at her location. And also, Mercedes, you've been speaking with so many of the students this morning. So much emotion for you as well.
Good afternoon, Kay and Rennie. Just to paint a picture of what we're seeing right now behind me, it honestly looks like a normal Schnucks parking lot at this point. There is a police car right behind us. That's the St. Louis Metropolitan Command Center. So they're still just here kind of handing out water and snacks, making sure everyone is okay. But where we are right now is basically cleared at this point. Most people have trickled out. They're having those reuniting moments at Gateway STEM. But like you said earlier, Kay, this has been really emotional for everyone. Definitely emotional seeing it as a reporter. We say it all the time. We're here to give you the facts and be transparent about what we know. But at the end of the day, we are still human. And this is really hard to wrap our heads around. I just know I'm not a parent, but I saw parents run past me crying. And I can just think of what that would feel like when you see your kid knowing that they're okay, but then also parents that still have that unknown feeling right now. It has been really emotional. And I think the thing that really got me was how young the people are that I've been speaking to. It just turns out that every student that I've been walking up to has been freshman, sophomore. So again, these are 15, 16-year-olds, and describing what they had to do and describing what they heard. Earlier today, I spoke with one freshman who told me that she heard gunshots, she heard screaming, and then she saw blood on the ground in the hallway. I mean, just imagine being that young. You see it on TV and you hear about it, and then it's happening in your own school. I did ask many of them if this makes them nervous now to be in school, to go to school every day, and they said it does. And for a lot of them, it hasn't really sunk in. A lot of them, they're just trying to console with their friends, kind of gather their thoughts, figure out what happens. But like they said in the press conference, there were many that were physically injured, but this is definitely going to leave a mental toll on everyone, not even just the students and parents inside, even all of us covering this, the first responders that responded to this. This is just one of those really difficult situations that you always see, and then when it's in your community, it just has a completely different feeling.
Ladies, when we spoke the first time, you said you had to park a couple of blocks away and walk over. So you had to walk through the neighborhood and see the people. And you were telling us that a lot of people did not realize what was taking place at the high school at that time.
Yeah, that's exactly right, Rennie. I actually haven't even gone back to my car. It's a couple blocks away because we've been stationed here this whole time. But when I got there, there were people driving the opposite directions on those side streets. I rolled down my window because I could see people talking to other people in their cars. And I actually parked, got out of my car because I realized I just need to start walking and get to the scene as quick as I possibly could to see what was happening. And I saw a woman say to somebody else in the car, like, you need to get out of here. There was a shooter. So there were people in this neighborhood just at their homes, walking out of their homes. I had no idea what was going on. That was kind of the most chaos that I saw this morning within these neighborhoods and these parents trying to get through. I did see a parent actually talking to a post office worker. Post office worker had rolled down their window and was like, what was going on? And the parent was like, I'm just trying to find my kids. So again, there was so much confusion this morning. I think some clarity has come now, but there's still so many questions that parents, teachers, students, and surrounding neighbors still have about this situation.
All right, Mercedes, you also take the advice of people and, take a breath, settle yourself down too, because you have witnessed quite a bit, a lot going on there, a lot of raw emotions. So you take care of yourself as well. Our Mercedes McKay reporting to us from the Schnucks parking lot that is very close to the school where the shooting did take place this morning.
Thank you, Mercedes. And our crews will continue to gather information and get reaction. We'll have the latest developments on air on KSDK.com and on the 5 on Your Side app. Thank you, Mercedes.
I believe at this time we also had a soundbite we wanted to go to with the student. Actually, we're going to go now to Christine Byers, and we know that Christine is at the meetup point at Gateway STEM. That is on McCree, 5101. That is where the students were being taken
One of the staging
on
areas
bus.
from
Yeah,
this
the
morning.
staging
Correct.
area. Christine.
Hi there. So Autumn is here with us, and she is a student at Gateway. Could you tell us what you experienced?
It was just a horrible lockdown, like making us nervous and all, like not telling us what's going on. And then it's like other students from Collegiate and CVAP, I believe, it's like they're coming here and it's like they don't know how many active shooters there were. And it's like you're bringing them to our school and it's like, what happens if they were actually shooting and it's like they came to our school, then what were you all going to do? So it's like kind of nerve-wracking, Like,
and what were they saying? What were they doing when they came here?
They didn't say anything though. It's like we didn't hear from for like 30 minutes. You didn't hear anything from teachers, principal, nothing. We're just sitting there, just to let our minds wander,
So it was just kind of scary at the moment because you didn't know who the shooter was or where they were.
Yes.
And what was it like to see your mom?
I was happy because it's like I wanted to go home and it's like, be safe with my mom. So, yeah.
Anything you want to say right now to the other students that went through all this today?
My hearts do go out to them and your families, the kids who were affected by this. I pray for you. Yeah, that's all I really can say.
Okay, thank you so much. Back to you, Rennie.
All right, thank you, Christine.
Thank
Christine
you,
Byers
Christine.
reporting from Gateway STEM. This is one of the meeting locations, or actually the meeting location when it comes to parents, guardians, and the kids. They were taken by bus from that Schnucks parking lot across from the shooting at the high school down there. This is probably a distance of a couple of miles on the other side of Interstate 44, and they're now being reunited. But it was emotional to see a kid, because you know how teenagers are. They don't necessarily want to hang out with their parents, but to know that all she wanted to do when she saw her mother was go home and feel safe and secure again.
Exactly, right. So many tears today just to see your loved one again.
Yeah.
So let's recap for you here at 12:18. Just over 3 hours ago, an active shooter situation in which at least 9 people were either hurt or killed. This happened at Central Visual and Performing Arts on Kingshighway and Arsenal. And also Collegiate School is right next door. The school was locked when we're told a 20-year-old man with a long gun entered the school. At this point, we know that shooter is dead after engaging with police and gunfire was exchanged. We know one teenage female died at the school. We know a female adult was taken to a local hospital where she also died of a gunshot wound. We're told at least 2 other students are injured and a total of 6 people are still in the hospital. 1 person suffered a cardiac arrest, but initially 8 people had been transported and 2 of them have since died. In the meantime, students and parents have been reuniting. There was so much chaos and so much heartbreak in the moments after this shooting. We also know, Rennie, that from Chief Sack, Michael Sack with the St. Louis Police Department, that police went in with no hesitation once they were told there was an active shooter and that gunfire had been heard.
A lot of things were witnessed inside of the school today, and the panic and the chaos, and also the idea that there was an orderly dismissal as well, because teachers have been trained in active shooter, and they were told to put the lockers against the door, and they were given access to get out of the school through the windows. But it was also said that everyone who was there, everyone who witnessed what took place, is going to have some type of trauma moving forward from this. And we do have numbers for people to call. If you need to get help, you can do that. We also want to go back out now to our Alex Fees. Oh, hold on, we've got sound from a student first. Let's play that. Okay, we're going to go to Alex Fees instead now, and I believe Alex is live for us near the school. Alex, what more have you learned?
Rennie and Kay, good afternoon. I interviewed 3 students in the Schnucks parking lot across the street who were inside the classrooms when the shots were fired this morning. What I learned from them, first of all, is that this all started when they heard Miles Davis music. That must mean the initiation of a drill within the school when Miles Davis music is played on the intercom. Also, of course, we have nothing on a motive, or we don't know anything about the events that may have led up to this yet. My colleague, Sarah Maki alluded to that earlier, as did Mercedes. We hope to hear more information about that coming from police later today. Now, the 3 students that I interviewed, one of them told me, at least one of them, they heard shots fired outside of the building before they heard shots fired inside of the building, and students had to jump from a 3rd-story window. Now, mind you, these are agile young teenagers, and it sounds like they were not seriously harmed in the process of jumping out that 3rd-story window. However, there may have been some injuries. And on the subject of injuries, I think it's important to make the distinction between someone who is injured and someone who is wounded. If I step off the curb and twist my ankle, I'm injured. If I step off the curb and make that, I'm injured. You're wounded when you get shot. It's just a matter of semantics, but it's worth pointing out that it is intentional. Also now, Rennie, I heard you guys alluding earlier to whether we may hear any kind of a media update throughout the course of the day today. It would be highly unusual if we do not hear anything more from first responders and investigators on this case. They're probably going to want a couple hours to collect information and to synthesize that information, but I would expect an update on what they can tell us later this afternoon.
All right, thank you, Alex.
Rennie, Kay?
Alex Fees reporting live for us just outside of the school, which continues to be a crime scene and maybe will be a crime scene for some time to come. We do know that the doors were locked and somehow the shooter got in. The police chief would not tell us exactly how the shooter was able to get in, because that is indeed a part of this investigation.
And we are really piecing together so many parts of this story from the eyewitness accounts, from the students who've been stopping and talking with our reporters in the field. One of those students was Adrian Bolden. He has been an eyewitness to this shooting, and here's what he had to tell us.
We just thought it was a regular intruder drill, but then when we started hearing sirens outside and the teachers started to even get scared, we knew that this wasn't just a regular drill and it was real. So then the teacher, she crawled over and she was asking for help to move the lockers to the door so they can't get in. And we started hearing glass breaking from the outside and gunshots outside the door. And then we tried to move out the window, jump out the window, but it was concrete at the bottom of one of the windows that was open, so we couldn't go down there. So we had to wait a little longer before the assistant principal came up to one of the windows that was locked. And when we opened it, the teacher said to come on, and we all had to jump out the window.
Terrifying moments
Yeah.
being described by such a young man,
I believe a freshman.
who shouldn't be right.
Yeah.
Who shouldn't be dealing with things like this. Adrian Bolden, who really has been so helpful to us to try to piece together what we know so far. So thank you to all those students who talked with us.
When we've been hearing from the students, we do have the understanding that they knew how to do things or what they were supposed to do. It was interesting that during Alex's live shot, he said that the Miles Davis music started playing on the intercom system, and that's when they had a sense that something's going on. It's active shooter training drill time. And then they realized later that this was not a drill. This was indeed the real thing. Our Sarah Maki is also outside of the high school right now. She was there for the news conference where officials were there. We're talking about the mayor was there, Congresswoman Cori Bush was there, the police chief was there, the fire department was there. Sarah, one thing that I take away from all of this is that everybody is shaken up in one way or the other, but at this time we really don't have any, concrete things to move forward in to understand exactly what happened inside of that school.
Yeah, I think that in a kind of way that you guys have just been talking about, we have done so much work to prepare for a moment like this. But law enforcement, every time we talk to them after a national incident somewhere else, they say that they do the training hoping that it never happens here. But today, really, the horrors of a school shooting played out in St. Louis. And they say that everybody did what they were supposed to do. And from there, that's about all we know right now. They know that at about 9:15 this morning, they got a call about an active shooter incident within minutes that their officers were here on scene, that the students had already begun to evacuate and were fleeing the building when their officers were able to arrive and talk to some of them, who informed them about some of the preliminary information, that this was a shooter with a long gun. They pointed those officers in the right direction, and those officers then went to engage with the shooter. They say that they were able to find that person, although we still don't know the name of the shooter, if he had any kind of connection to the school, to any of the people who were injured here today, had been a student or was currently a student. The police chief did say that they believe that this man is about 20 years old, which would place him just probably beyond high school age, but we are still trying to find more information about all of this. We still also don't know the names of the two people who at this time have been pronounced dead. We do know one is an adult woman, the other a juvenile. We also do know that there were several other students who had to be transported for injuries. Some of them were not bullet wounds, may have been debris or something like that. And as we heard too, that so many of these kids, their instincts and their training kicked in, and that they were able to leave out of third floor building windows, and some of them might have been injured trying to do that too. So we were hearing from everybody at every level of government today about some of that information from the chief, from the schools, and then we also heard from the mayor, who said that when she was called about this, she kind of hearkened back to her last experience here on campus, which was the first day of classes when she was dancing and singing with this student body, and obviously a very different situation today. We also heard from her talking about her experience as a mother, that her son contacted her to talk to her about this, and that really hit home for her in a way that I'm sure it will for so many parents around our area. We also heard from Representative Corey Bush today, who wanted to talk about that sort of mentality that we hope these things never come here, but today they did. I don't know if we were able to get a soundbite prepared for you. If we did, I would want to hear from her right now, but she said too that the healing will have to continue. At this point, they're trying to put together a hotline for people who might have been inside of the building, who have left, maybe not dealing with any physical injuries, but obviously there will be a lot of emotional and mental support that will be needed from this point on. So, Rennie, Kay, it's going to be a really long situation, and there's going to be a lot more that we're going to be learning over the next hours, days, and weeks.
All right, Sarah Maki, live for us from the scene there at Kingshighway and Arsenal. Thank you so much. Rennie Knott has taken a break. He has been on the air since 4 o'clock this morning. My colleague Ann Allred joins me now. We want to pass along that phone number. Congressman Corey Bush is asking that anyone who needs help with any kind of resource, including a mental health resource, call her office at 314-955-9988. And as Sarah mentioned, other mental health resources are being gathered right now. We will share those resources with you as soon as we get them. All right, let's go out live to 5 on Your Side's Christine Byers. She is also live near the school where she's talking with parents. Christine?
Okay, that's right. I'm at Gateway High School, where parents are still continuing to reunite with their students. And it's a little bit of a chaotic scene here as a bunch of parents are gathered and they're trying to form a line so that they can sign out their students one by one. Now, the shooting did not happen here, but this is a location where a lot of students were brought to reunite with their parents, and Gateway High School students are also wanting to go home, and parents are obviously very concerned as well. So as you can see, a long line here, school officials and security trying to do their best to keep everybody in a single file line and as calm as can be. But again, they want everyone to sign their students out and sign a paper. Obviously, you know, a lot going on for these administrators, security and staff professionals, and parents just very worried, very emotional right now. You know, I mean, I can tell you I'm a parent, and there's a look that you give fellow parents in these situations. You just understand. There's just a mutual understanding of fear here, and you just want to see your child. So a little bit of chaos here, but they're getting the line moving. Everybody is starting to calm down right now. So here we are hours later after the shooting and still trying to get parents reunited with their students.
So, Christine, give us a sense. Are parents telling you that their students are not able to be released right now? What exactly are we waiting for here?
So basically, they're just trying to make this as orderly as possible. I mean, they've got a whole high school full of kids here and parents that want to pick everybody up, but they also want to be methodical about accounting for all of the students going in and out. So again, trying to have them sign on the sign-up sheet and the sign-out sheet. So that's really what the issue is here. And again, the Gateway students were not involved in the shooting, but all of the students that did come here to the school. And just a bunch of parents told me that they just want to pick up their students at this point. They don't want them in school today. They just want to get them home and spend some time with them. But it's a process.
Christine, Captain Michael Sack told us earlier that police will be interviewing many of the eyewitnesses, many of the students. Have you heard anything about that? Is that part of the process of screening students who are still inside the school?
Well, right now, police that are interviewing those students are in the back of this building because all of the students that were involved in the shooting have been brought to the back of the building, whereas Gateway students who were just here at school having a regular day, they're here towards the front of the building, and that's where we are allowed to be. So at this point where those interviews are taking place, we were able to see them earlier, but we were not allowed to stay there because it is on private property.
And Chief Sack did say he didn't necessarily want to talk to these students students today because he thought they might need to rest, regroup, and maybe they would talk to them tomorrow or the following day just because of the extreme trauma.
He asked media not to talk with them today and to give them space as well, and which is so understandable. But so many people want to tell their stories in moments like these. They make sense of it by being able to talk with someone, even if it's a reporter.
And it's fresh in their mind.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas tonight, when they're on the computer and they're on their phones, obviously talking to friends, finding solace in friends, then stories start getting recounted. So sometimes it is good to talk to them, but obviously are starting to identify the students that were eyewitnesses to that.
Correct.
We also heard from Mayor Tashara Jones today, obviously a St. Louis City school. Here's what she had to say at the 11 a.m. press conference.
Our children shouldn't have to experience this. They shouldn't have to go through active shooter drills in case something happens. And unfortunately, that happened today. I also want to thank our first responders who ran in and made sure our babies were safe and took care of the situation sooner rather than later. And I'm sure that everyone involved is going to have to deal with the trauma that will reverberate across our community in the days and the months to come. This is just so unfair. It's so unfair. My heart and prayers go out to the families again. And I want to thank the school district, again, and our first responders for running towards danger to save our children, to save our staff and students. Thank you.
And it's a story we've heard over and over, how police rushed in toward the gunfire and did not hesitate, in the words of Chief Sack, to go toward that gunfire. And it really gives you a chill that they knew they were in life-threatening situation with an active shooter, and yet they went forward and likely saved many lives.
Undoubtedly, lives were saved. We have 3 people dead, that includes the shooter, and then 6 people are in the hospital with wounds from shrapnel to gunshots. 1 person suffered cardiac arrest, but they said those officers not only went in immediately, very soon after that call, but then when they heard the gunfire, they ran to the gunfire. And we've had so many of these school shootings across the country, unfortunately. The most recent one in Uvalde, Texas, huge investigation because officers took them an hour before they breached into that classroom where the shooter was.
The St. Louis police engaged with the gunman immediately when they found him in a hallway. 5 on your sides, Greg Miller is live for us. He is at Barnes Jewish Hospital, which has been a very busy place as healthcare workers take care of the victims in today's shooting. Greg? Okay, well, we're having a little bit of a problem with Greg's audio, but we're going to get back to him in just a moment. You know, I wasn't there, obviously, but it makes my heart race to think of the situation that our local police force was in this morning and our innocent students of St. Louis Public Schools and, you know, their parents. And I'm a mother, you're a mother, it's really just heartbreaking to think about what went on this morning.
And parents of the 6 people, families of the 6 people that are in the hospital right now at Barnes, taken there this morning. 2 people who were at that school this morning who are now deceased. They won't be going home tonight. We're still trying to find out more about this shooter, what relation this shooter had. We know it's a 20-year-old man. One student in an interview with us did say it was a white man that came in and said, "Get ready to die," to these students.
But we can't confirm that. That is an eyewitness report. That has not been confirmed by police. So that's what we're doing right now, is really going off of a lot of our eyewitness reports of what happened. But we want to remind you that that has not been confirmed from police. We just have very basic information about the scenario from police at this point. We will bring you anything new that they tell us as soon as we can. All right, let's go back to Greg Miller. He is live at Barnes Hospital. Greg?
Yeah, you guys were talking a few minutes ago about the nature of these injuries. Some of what we're seeing, we can tell you this afternoon that 4 of those victims were taken to Children's Hospital, another 2 were taken to Barnes. We saw police officers out here a few minutes ago. They have mostly left. There were also a few people standing in the background. They have all gone inside. As to the severity of the injuries, how badly those people were hurt, hospital officials won't confirm that this afternoon. They're talking about a lot of privacy concerns right now, trying to give the family some space as they continue to recover. They also will not disclose to us the ages either. But again, as you all were talking before, we've heard from some of those eyewitness accounts about shrapnel wounds, other types of wounds. Presumably 6 of those people were taken here, though, about an hour ago, as officials still try to sort through all of the details of what's happening here. Those medical officials, those medical workers you talked about, helping them right now. But in terms of the active nature of this scene, like we said, a couple police officers were out here earlier. We saw a detective's car out here earlier as well, some officers walking in and out. But it looks like most of them have left now. So if there was any questioning that was happening, those folks have left now, and the people are inside now beginning their recovery and their treatment options. We're going to send it back to you guys in the studio. We had a little bit of an audio problem there. If there are any questions, I can answer them, though.
All right, Greg Miller, live for us at Barnes Jewish Hospital. Thank you so much.
Let's get to Mercedes McKay. She has the very latest for us. Mercedes?
Hey, Ann and Kay, we're here at the Schnucks on Arsenal, which is just kind of a couple streets down from the school. We can see the school right now from our vantage point, and this is a very different scene from when it was about 9:45, 10 a.m. when we arrived here. You can see behind me the flashing lights. That's the St. Louis Metropolitan Police Command Center. It's been here all morning long. Also a Salvation Army truck as well. They're just here making sure people that are still in this area, which there's not many at this point, have water, have food, have snacks. But to be honest with you guys, this is just basically running like a normal parking lot at this time. Our photographer Tony Chambers is going to show you people are going in and out. I've seen people coming out of the Schnucks with their grocery bags, so things are almost basically back to normal at this point in time. But later today on 5 on Your Side and the 4, 5, and 6 shows, we'll hear more from students I spoke to this morning that are just still reeling from this and the emotion and everything that they had to go through.
Mercedes, thank you.
All right, thank you so much, Mercedes. So again, as we recap for you, 9 people were injured or killed in an active shooter situation at Central VPA School just after 9 o'clock this morning. Around 11 o'clock, St. Louis Mayor Tashora Jones, St. Louis Police Chief Michael Sack, Congresswoman Cori Bush, many other local officials held a news conference and shared the information that they were able to share at that time. We're going to bring you that news conference in its entirety right now.
Good morning. I'm Chief Mike Sack. This morning about 9:10 a.m., we received a call for an active shooter at the school here at Kingshighway and Arsenal. Officers arrived within a couple minutes of the call going out, and they immediately made entry into the school. As kids were fleeing out of the building, they talked to some of the kids who told them that there was a shooter armed with a long gun. The officers began to clear the building looking for the shooter. Upon hearing gunfire, they ran to that gunfire, located the shooter, and engaged that shooter in exchange of gunfire. The suspect was struck and transported from this location, and that suspect has since been pronounced deceased. At this time, no officers are injured. We had 8 individuals from the school who were transported to local hospitals. 1 adult female has been pronounced at a local hospital. I believe that was from gunfire. We have 1 teenage female remaining here at the scene. She's also been pronounced as a result of a wound she received from gunfire. The others who were injured suffered a variety of injuries, from shrapnel injuries to gunshots. They're currently being treated. As their condition changes, we hope for the better. We'll provide that information to you as the day goes on. The building has been searched, initially by responding officers, then by our SWAT team. The bomb dog did go through the building after that. The Force Investigation Unit will be conducting the investigation here. They now control the building. They're going to be conducting their search and doing interviews. All the kids, when they were left the school, were directed to 2 particular locations. They've since been transported to Gateway School. Parents may respond to Gateway School to be reunited with their children. We do need to get the information of the kids who are in the building so we can talk to them. That may not happen today. We need to get their information, understand, but they may not be interviewed today, understanding that they just went through a traumatic incident. But we do need to identify who was in the building and where they were at. It's very important. The officers did an amazing job. I was talking to a captain who was one of the first people into the school building. He spoke about how the officers arrived quickly, made entry with no hesitation, went directly to the sound of gunfire, which is the expectation not only of the department but of the community as well, to protect our kids and our teachers in these schools that should be considered safe. This is a heartbreaking day for all of us. It's going to be tough. While on paper we might have 9 victims, 8 who are transported and 1 remain, we have hundreds of others. Everyone who survived here is going to take home trauma. Even the officers who responded here and the firefighters and the paramedics who worked on people here are going to experience some degree of trauma. It's terrible to think about. Here is a safe place where kids go to learn, to grow, to develop, and something like this happens. It's just heartbreaking. But that we're aware of, there's no additional threats, so the community is safe here. Officers are patrolling the area. We have located what we believe to be as a suspect's vehicle. We'll be going through that soon after the bomb dog or the bomb squad checks it out. But again, we believe that we have the 1 suspect recovered and that no one else is at immediate risk at this time. And officers are currently working and processing the scene and are going to work to prepare their report for this incident.
Can you tell us about the suspect, his age, his connection to the school?
Sure. The suspect appears to be about 20 years of age. We haven't positively identified him yet, and that will then lead to any relationship to a person or the school itself.
Can we hold
Chief,
the
what can you
questions
tell-
until the end? We have a few other people that need to speak. We'll take questions at the end. Dr. Isom.
So just want to say our hearts go out to the victims of this tragedy, certainly those who have lost loved ones. But as the chief has said, this is a community tragedy. All of us are impacted by horrific incidents like this. We will continue to work with the school, with the family members to complete the investigation and help with the recovery from this trauma. We know that many people will never recover, but we will try to assist them as they deal with their grief. So I do want to thank the officers for their response. I was here very quickly and they engaged the suspect, thankfully, immediately. And so I do believe that their quick actions saved lives. So thank you to the police department, and we will continue to work to follow up and get more information about why and how this happened. So thank you.
We have George Sells from St. Louis Public Schools.
Hi. Obviously, our prayers also to the families right now. Dr. Adams is not here because he's meeting with families right now.
Dr. Adams right here.
Well, there he is. Dr. Adams, step right up. He was not here a few minutes ago.
Dr. Adams, Superintendent.
Good morning. Obviously, today is a tragedy. 700 students were impacted by what occurred here. The police department was on the spot, our security team as well, as we're working aggressively to try to find out what occurred and to make sure that this does not happen again. I'm really pleased that the faculty and staff rallied around getting students out of the building as quickly as possible. The building right now is a crime scene, and obviously we'll be working with families to get them the materials that are left in the building and also to reopen the building as soon as possible. I want to thank the police department and all of those parties that came to the table to support the 700 students in this building. So thank you very much.
Mayor Jones will be speaking next.
I visited this school on the first day and talked to the students and how excited they were about their upcoming school year. They were bright-eyed, bushy-tailed. We laughed, we sang, we danced. And now to be here for such a devastating and traumatic situation breaks my heart, especially as a mother. My son called because they got the news at his school as well. And he says, "Mommy, you sound stressed." I'm stressed and I'm heartbroken. I'm heartbroken for these families who send their children to our schools hoping that they'll be safe. Our children shouldn't have to experience this. They shouldn't have to go through active shooter drills in case something happens. And unfortunately, that happened today. I also want to thank our first responders who ran in and made sure our babies were safe and took care of the situation sooner rather than later. And I'm sure that everyone involved is going to have to deal with the trauma that will reverberate across our community in the days and the months to come. This is just so unfair. It's so unfair. My heart and prayers go out to the families again.
St. Louis Mayor Tashora Jones speaking at a news conference that was held just after 11 o'clock this morning following an active shooter at a high school in the city of St. Louis. Central VPA is the scene, and we do know at this point at least 3 people are dead and 6 others are hurt.
Let's go out to Gateway STEM. That is a staging area where parents are trying to reunite with their children. It's been a very slow process because there's a lot of details. Christine Byers, you're with a mother right now.
Yes, that's right. I'm with a woman who had 2 daughters at the school where the shooting occurred, and she's here waiting to pick up another daughter who was at Gateway. And ma'am, can you tell us what you heard from your daughters?
I was at work, and my daughter actually texted me and said the intruder alarm was going off, but she didn't know if it was real or not. And she texted me no longer than like 2 seconds later and was like, Mom, it's real. I heard gunshots. So I told her immediately go hide somewhere or whatever. And she was like, well, the teacher got us barricaded inside and the doors are locked. And I ended up calling her. She picked up. She was crying like really bad, crying. It just hurt my heart. Like, you want to be there to protect your children, you know what I'm saying, or whatever. And just to hear my baby cry like that and I can't be there to help her, that like really hurt me. Like, that hurt me so bad.
And did your daughter know the young girl who lost her life today?
Yes, she did. They wasn't close or whatever, but they was they had like classes together, so she did know who the young girl was. And I pray for her family too, because that's a scary situation.
And as far as what your daughter told her she did to try to escape, what did she tell you?
She told me that she's finna jump out the window, and I was like, no, Pooh, don't do that, because you can die that way too. I was like, where are you guys? And she like, Mom, he got us barricaded. And I'm like, then she was like, Mom, they on the floor, he's shooting on the floor, whatever. And I'm like, don't say nothing, don't make a sound, like, just be quiet, whatever, and just pray. Like, we just gonna pray and hope, just pray that God get y'all out the situation. And she's like, Mom, if he come in this room, I'ma jump. And it's like, for real, I really couldn't tell her nothing else. Like, if that's what she was gonna do, that's what she was gonna do.
And how old are your daughters?
My oldest is 17. She's a junior, and then I have a 16-year-old that's there too.
And so the one you were talking to was the 16-year-old?
17-year-old. Yeah.
And what was it like the moment you saw her? Where were you actually able to see her again?
I was on the phone with her the entire time. So she said that somebody was knocking at the door, that the teacher wasn't sure or not it could have been the person who was shooting. So he stayed and let them continue to keep knocking and knocking on the door, even though they was yelling out it was the police. He still didn't go straight to the door. So he waited till they walked away and kind of went and like glanced and saw the police and let them out and let the kids out. And then she said they was being directed to Snook's lot. So I was already like on Arsenal. I don't know what the side street is. I just hopped out the car and like ran to Snook's lot. Whatever. And then wasn't sure at the time. I didn't know how my other daughter was because I was only in contact with my 17-year-old. So I was crying like real bad because my other daughter don't have a phone. So I was like, I didn't know how she was. So my daughter finally said that she got to her. I rushed right to them. They rushed right to me. Like, my heart, just dropped. And I felt bad because you could see all the other kids crying and upset and stuff or whatever. And I just felt bad for them too.
I bet. And as far as, so you reunited on Schnook's lot, right?
Yes,
and what do you think of the police response today?
I'm glad. Like, they went straight in. Like, I was happy. I was happy because sometimes, like when you hear about like the school shootings and what's going on, sometimes they don't get to the kids, fast enough, or they not sure whether they should go in or not, or whatever. They thinking twice. I'm glad that they went in because I was gonna go in too with them. Like that's how I felt. Like I'm honestly telling you the truth. That's how I felt. Like I was gonna go in right with them.
Well, thank you so much for sharing your story with us.
Thank you so much.
Ann and Kay, back to you.
Christine, thank you. We want to get to a statement from St. Louis Public Schools that just came in. In an abundance of caution, all SLPS schools are on hard lockdown, which means for the remainder of the day, there will be limited movement in and outside those schools. At dismissal, all scheduled buses will leave at the appointed time. We are asking that any parents who want to come to school and pick up a student, please call the school in advance and let the office know when and who will be picking up the student. The student will be walked out to them. Please note, all after-school classes and athletic activities are canceled for this evening. We will remain in touch with our families and community. Please rely on SLPS communications and the police department updates for your information. And we want to reset here for people who may be joining us in the last several minutes about what happened today. This happened at Central VPA, that's a high school at Arsenal and Kingshighway. It was about 9:10 in the morning when a call came in for an active shooter. The police responded immediately. The shooter was in the building. Police heard gunshots, ran towards the gunshots, engaged the shooter, shot the shooter. We're told 9 people, including the shooter, were hurt. 3 people, including the shooter, died. 6 people were hurt and were transported to the hospital. The big 2 questions right now, after hearing from the chief of police and the mayor, is who is the shooter? They said they think it's about a 20-year-old male. They were working on trying to identify him. Who is the shooter? What is the relation between the shooter and the student body or the school, or is there any relation? And the second big question is, the chief of police said that this school was locked. All the doors were shut. So how did the shooter get in? When a reporter asked the police chief that, he said, we're not getting into that, and was very firm that that was not something they'd be getting into right now as they continue to investigate. Students are at Gateway being picked up, reunited with their families right now. Some of them were reunited earlier. We heard from that mother in the Schnucks parking lot in South City off of Arsenal. But they're going to try and talk to some of these students, these eyewitnesses, and piece them together. But a very traumatic day. 3 people dead, 6 people hurt this morning in an active shooter situation.
And Central Visual and Performing Arts School is still a crime scene. It is still on lockdown, and investigators are combing through every part of that school so that they can gather all the information they need for their investigation. Chief Sack telling us that there will be a full, obvious investigation into exactly what happened this morning, the timeline, and who this shooter was, who is now deceased. So here's what we know about the people at the hospital. We know at least 2 students are among the 6 people that have been injured, although at this point it could be 4 because we know 4 of those in the hospital right now are at St. Louis Children's Hospital, which would make you think that these are young people, and 2 of the victims are at Barnes Jewish Hospital, which is right next door. We also were told earlier today that these injuries include gunshot wounds, wounds from shrapnel, and at least 1 cardiac arrest. We have had no update on the condition of these people. We do have a reporter, our Greg Miller is at the scene, and we will bring you more as soon as we know it.
As far as who is deceased, the shooter is deceased, and police say they believe it was a single suspect acting alone. The police went in after he had been stopped and shot. Police went in, swept the school. Then the SWAT team came in, swept the school. Then the bomb dogs came in and the bomb squad came in and swept the school. Obviously, like you said, still a crime scene, but they say it is on lockdown now. They have it cleared.
There's no further threat to the public.
And
correct.
We know as far as people who are deceased besides the shooter is 1 adult female. We do not know the relation to the school, and 1 teenage female who they have not identified. Obviously, they're working on notifying those families right now.
Mm-hmm. Here are some resources for those affected by the school shooting. Congresswoman Cori Bush urging those affected at Central VPA to reach out to her office. The number, we're going to put it on the screen here in just a moment, 314-955-9980. She asks you, If you need anything right now, any kind of assistance, mental health or otherwise, to please call that number. Counselors are also at CVPA and will continue to make themselves available to students, staff, and families for as long as needed. You can also see the number for behavioral health response. We have partnered with their counselors so many times here on 5 on Your Side. They are making counselors available to anyone who needs to talk or feels that they need help right now. That number, 314-469-6644, or you can call 314-819-8802. Mayor Tashora Jones promising in her news conference a little while ago that there would be many resources for students, families, staff, and the community at large, and we will continue to gather those for you and make sure that you know where to find that help.
And the City of St. Louis working on mental resources as well. We also, as far as the suspect goes, police did say that they located the suspect's car, and reports are that he had a long gun. Students, eyewitnesses have been telling our reporters on multiple scenes that they had had active shooter training in the past. It sounds like more than once. They seem very familiar with it. And when they heard shots or when they heard commotion, they thought it was a training this morning. That's what an overwhelming amount of students have said. And that's when they realized all of a sudden it was not. One student told us he walked out with a friend into the hall, and the friend very astutely said, "No one's coming out into the hallway. Why is no one coming out into the hallway?" And they kind of realized what was going on. Children had to jump out of windows. A principal was at the bottom of a window. We're told sometimes 3 stories up, trying to tell kids to come down, and they were forced to jump out. These kids had to help their teachers move lockers to block doors during all of this, right at the beginning of the school day on a Monday morning, which is good that they had that training, but so incredibly sad that they had to
Traumatic.
use it today.
Yes, exactly. 5 on Your Side's Christine Byers has been talking with students and parents all morning long. Christine is at Gateway STEM, which is one of the reunification places for students and their families. Christine?
Thanks, Kate. Yes, I'm here talking more with students and parents that are still being reunited, mostly from Gateway. This is the location where all of the students and staff were brought to reunite with loved ones after the shooting happened. So there are students at this school that were not involved in the shooting, but they still very much want to reunite with their parents and loved ones as well. And it's kind of a meticulous operation. The school and school officials are signing students out one by one. So parents are waiting eagerly to see their students and having to sign them out one at a time. And try to get everybody out. I mean, there are dozens and dozens of students that they're trying to release all at the same time, very unexpectedly, but they're trying to do the best that they can. Back to you.
All right, thank you so much, Christine. Our crews will continue to gather information all afternoon long and get reaction for you on this school shooting that happened this morning about 10 after 9 at Central Visual and Performing Arts at Kingshighway and Arsenal. 3 people are dead, 6 others injured, and we'll have the latest developments on air on KSDK.com and on the 5 on Your Side app. We will be back here at 4 p.m. with another news update. For now, we turn it over to Daily Blast.